Judy? Judy?
Yeah.
It'll take me a minute with the screen share just to adjust to get to what I want. You're okay with that? That's why I had it up.
Sure.
No,
Okay, we're gonna.
okay.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for Spirit, the stimulating program initiative for retirees that inspires thought. I'm Judy Steinig, Director of Community Programs for the Orthodox Union, and it's my honor to host and coordinate this program. The OU created Spirit several years ago as an on-site program, and now we're happy to present it as an online program for baby boomers, active retirees, not yet retirees, empty nesters, sandwich generation parents, and seniors. Everybody who's looking for opportunities for educational, intellectual, and spiritual growth. Since we all continue to shelter in because of the pandemic, Spirit has become the perfect way for everyone to engage in a virtual setting. Today, we are so happy to present the second part of our programming on Aliyah. And we are so fortunate to have Nefesh B'Nefesh do this presentation for us. Now, I want to remind everybody that part one of the program was presented several weeks ago. I think it was August 11th, and you can find all of the materials for that in our archives, which everyone has access to in the emails that you get from me. We are so happy to welcome to our Spirit Forum, Miriam Naiman, Senior Aliyah Advisor from Nefesh B'Nefesh, and behind the scenes, Josh Sussman, Senior Events Manager of the Community Integration Division. The OU enjoys a long and wonderful relationship with Nefesh B'Nefesh, and this wonderful organization has become a very part of our biennial community fair. I'd like to thank Ari Schuchman, Director of North American Operations, for making the introductions for today's program. Please note that for today, the chat, which is usually disabled, is enabled for this program. We ask you to place any specific questions for Nefesh B'Nefesh in the chat. Please make sure that you are asking questions and not comments, which can be distracting and detract from the presentation. It's my honor to turn the program over to Miriam and Josh. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you so much. I'm very, very excited to be part of this programming. I love the name of the program, which has the words in it, inspiration and thought. And I hope what's brought you to your computer screens today is a little bit of inspiration and a little bit of thought, and that you're going to leave today's presentation with even more inspiration and a little bit more of what to think about. Because it's such a large group and questions really can't be asked live as we go, it's not so interactive. Although my coworker Josh will be managing questions on the chat, should you have questions that are personal or questions that you feel need clarification, you'll see my email here on the screen, and it'll be repeated at the end of today's discussion. And it's really a discussion based on those important subjects that I know are so important to everyone, be it healthcare, be it community, be it creating community. Let's see here we go. Okay. So when it comes to Aliyah, we sort of wonder who is making Aliyah and who looks in themselves in the mirror and say, could this be me? Perhaps you know some of these couples here on the screen. When it comes to just the thought, remember, I love this name, Spirit. Everybody needs a lot of spirit when you're even considering moving to Israel, because it takes a lot. You're not coming on one of your trips. You're not just moving somewhere like you might move from Miami to Toronto even, or from New York to California. You're immigrating to a foreign country. Regardless of how familiar Israel is or how near and dear it is to your heart, you're immigrating to a new country, and that's why giving certain aspects of immigration are so very important. Not so that you can come and be, but so that you can come and live and enjoy, and really to the max, to the fulfillment that you are looking for, spend your days here in Israel as a citizen who is contributing, as a citizen who is now learning something new for themselves and gaining for themselves. And that is why today we're really going to put a big focus on community with a little bit on healthcare. This is not a healthcare presentation. Nefesh has lots of healthcare presentations, but of course, understanding how healthcare is managed also intertwines with the community that you're going to live in, because perhaps some of you have the need to live near a hospital, or whatever the case is. Healthcare is certainly a very important aspect of understanding and researching before one makes this move. And it's certainly an area of Aliyah preparation that I am personally very passionate about. So Aliyah, who me? Well, who are you? Living where you are today, perhaps there are things that you've never really had to think about. Perhaps you've never really had to give solid thought to your religious orientation, because in North America, a person can be here or there. A person can wear a black hat and a jacket and a white shirt and go to a baseball game. The same person who dresses quite differently can walk into a shul where other people dress in that. I'm giving very extreme examples, but how a person dresses, what they do, North America is significantly more heterogeneous, whereas communities and what one does in Israel might be more homogeneous. And that's why when considering Aliyah, me, well, who am I? And what is it that I'm looking for? Making this move, immigrating into this new country, really necessitates you sort of starting from scratch. There may be those of you who are coming on your own and who do not have children here. You are coming on your own. There may be those of you who are married, leaving your children behind, those of you who are coming to join children, or those of you who are leaving children behind and joining other children here. Everybody has a dream of Aliyah. It's inside of us. And I'm so happy that you are joining me today to really now explore what that dream is about for you. Healthcare in Israel is really what we're starting with today, because it's an important question. And everyone but everyone has those questions that I know are important to you. How accessible is it? Will I be able to get my medications? What about finding an English-speaking doctor? What about a specialist? What about this and what about that? Because I know that if I had to move to America, I made Aliyah for the second time 24 years ago. We had lived in Israel prior to that. I didn't know the first thing about healthcare in Israel, but now if I had to move back to America, I don't know really the first thing about healthcare in America either. Healthcare in Israel is managed by the National Insurance Institute. The logo is here on the top left, an intertwined menorah, the Bituach Leumi. They manage all of the different social programming in the country, be it healthcare, be it disability, be it elder care, be it child allotment for those of you who still may have children at home under the age of 18. All of the different social programming in Israel is managed by the Bituach Leumi. The providers of healthcare in Israel are provided by the healthcare funds in no specific order, but their logos are here, are Maccabi, Me'uchedet, Leumit, and Klalit. If you've been to Israel before, they may be familiar to you just by seeing their logos around. And that's actually one of the ways you can know which Kupat Cholim, which healthcare fund is popular in a city, because you can see the logo, you can see their clinics throughout the city. Other cities may have less of a particular healthcare provider and more of another. So just a little bit here about the Israeli healthcare system. First and foremost, it is a universal system, and it's mandatory to be part of the healthcare system. Everyone has eligibility to be part of the healthcare system, regardless of age and regardless of any pre-existing conditions. The oldest Olet, who has since recently, very recently applied for Aliyah, he should live and be well, is 106 years old. And he will have every opportunity for the highest tier of supplemental insurance, together with the ability to register for healthcare even before he gets on the plane. Because for someone who has no Israeli background, that means you were not born to an Israeli parent. It means you did not live in Israel and leave prior to the age of, that you did not live in Israel and leave after the age of 14, or you were never a temporary resident. It's very common now, people making Aliyah who were temporary residents back in the 60s, back in the 70s. Someone with no previous Israeli status is entitled to register for healthcare at the airport. That means before you collect the luggage, you are already covered by the healthcare system. Somebody with a previous Israeli status is also eligible for healthcare, depending on what that status is, and they will register in their local office of the Ministry of Absorption very soon after their arrival. It's just a little bit of a different registration process, but what is important to note is that you have every eligibility to have healthcare. There's no waiting period, assuming that you are eligible. If you did have a pre-existing Israeli status, it could influence the time differential until when you're part of the healthcare system, but nothing will prevent you from being part of the Israeli healthcare system, and that's huge. Healthcare funds offer you equal service. That means that the basic level of a healthcare fund, regardless of which one you choose, what is determined by the Ministry of Health. And so if a particular medication is covered by the Ministry of Health and in what's called the basket of medications, then that is available for every Kupat Cholim, for every health care provider. It doesn't matter which one you have. So that basket, that healthcare fund basket, is very large. If you're truly interested, then you can go to the website of the Ministry of Health, and it will begin to go through many of the services and many of the things that are available to you from the Ministry of Health. Are your medications available in Israel? Most likely, yes. But that's not something to assume, and that's not something to take for granted. There is a medication registry found on the Ministry of Health website or on our website under the healthcare section of our website, where you can put in your medication in English, and you will see if it's covered within the basket or not. If it's not, it might be covered through your supplemental plan. All of the Kupot Cholim, all of the healthcare funds have two different supplemental plans. We're going to call them silver and gold for the sake of our conversation. Each provider calls them something else. When you have the silver or the gold, it then expands the healthcare opportunities for you beyond the basic healthcare basket. And so this broadens your opportunity for medications. It broadens your opportunity for seeing private doctors. It broadens your opportunity for certain lifestyle needs, such as vision and dental, such as joining a gym or seeing certain holistic doctors, acupuncture, and different things like that. This is all with the supplemental plan. And it's with the supplemental plan that the Kupot Cholim have their individuality. So if you have a very specific medication, and it's not covered for you through the basic basket of medications, you're going to want to compare one kupat to the other to make sure that you indeed, based on your decision, are going to be able to get the medication that is so very important to you. There's a lot to understand when it comes to the healthcare system. It is a very different system than the American healthcare system. Some of you may be saying, well, I have Medicare and I have very good health insurance, and I just think I'm going to keep that when I move to Israel. It's really worked for me just fine every time I visited the country. But again, I want to state that it's mandatory to be part of the Bituach Leumi system, the national insurance system, which then filters down into your healthcare. Bituach Leumi also states that one must retain their residency in Israel in order to be part of and gain the benefits of the Bituach Leumi system. And for our conversation right now, we're going to talk about healthcare. That means that Israel states, we want Israel to be the center of life for our citizens in order to provide healthcare for our citizens. And that means spending 183 days in a calendar year from your date of Aliyah. And so if you made Aliyah on September 1st, 2021, possibility, if you made Aliyah on September 1st, 2021, that means before September 1st, 2022, you will have needed to spend cumulatively 183 days in the country. You want to go visit anywhere. You want to take vacation, you want to go visit an elderly parent, you want to visit your kids, whatever you want to do, no problem. No one's going to stop you. But make sure that you spent 183 days in the country so that you don't lose your residency. Some of you may know people who are Israeli and now they want to come back to Israel, and they are called Toshavim Chozrim, a returning resident. Once a person is Israeli, they're always Israeli. I'm a US citizen till 120, I will always be a US citizen, and the same holds true for an Israeli. Once you make Aliyah, you will always be an Israeli citizen. In fact, citizenship is something that you gain, again, before you collect those suitcases, you're going to have signed on your Israeli citizenship at the airport. But what you can lose is your residency, and therefore what you can lose is your status within the healthcare system. Again, because this isn't a healthcare specific presentation, I'm really only touching on some very, very surface points. Some of them are important, yes, but really surface points. Understanding what the age of retirement is important because it's linked in to certain benefits. The age of retirement has nothing to do if one is working or one is not working, but rather it's determined by age, by the Bituach Leumi, by the national insurance, as 62 for a woman and 67 for a man. Doesn't matter if you're working or not working. But that means if you make Aliyah over the age of 62 as a woman and over the age of 67 as a man, and you, God forbid, have some sort of mobility disability or another type of disability that you have already been assessed for in the US, know that it will not come under the term disability in Israel, but rather it will come under the term of elder care. If you are under that age and make Aliyah, then once you become that age, please God, once you turn 62 or 67, you will then be grandfathered in given your benefits of what you received prior to the age of retirement. Elder care is very different in Israel. For starters, the state says, Bituach Leumi says, we have a program. Like I said, Bituach Leumi is responsible for all social programming in the country, and elder care is one of them. One of the links that you're going to be sent from this taped presentation is a link to the Bituach Leumi site under elder care to understand what elder care means when covered by the Bituach Leumi. In short, the Bituach Leumi states that elder care should be available to all. Now, in a more socialized system, not social, but socialized system, it means that something is available to everyone based on monetary status. And so, in order to be eligible for an elder care subsidy through the Bituach Leumi, as a single, it's going to be dependent on your income of in and around 10,000 shekel a month. And when I say income, I'm referring to your worldwide income, not your income in Israel, because all of you are saying to yourselves, well, we're not going to work in Israel, so why is she talking about income? This is your worldwide income starting with your Social Security. As a couple, it's a little bit higher. It's somewhere between 18 and 20,000 shekel a month that you will be assessed at from a monetary perspective, from a ceiling, in order to be eligible for a caregiver to come in for certain hours during the week in order to help you. Or you may need 24-hour care, in which, again, if you are found eligible for a subsidy through the Bituach Leumi, it will still cost you some money for 24-hour care. It'll cost you about 8,000 shekel a month. Okay, I'm quoting in shekel. You can do the exchange rate on your own. And that covers different needs for the caregiver. There's a lot here, okay? There's a lot to understand from Bituach Leumi and elder care. You might have an elder care, which is called long-term care in America. You might have a long-term care policy that's going to be recognized in Israel. And don't make that assumption. Assumption is something that you leave before you even buy a notebook that you write at the top, Aliyah notebook. Somebody once said, well, where do you buy an Aliyah notebook? An Aliyah notebook is just some sort of notebook, pad of paper that you have designated for all of your Aliyah questions, for all of your Aliyah concerns. And besides, there's nothing better than making a checklist and being able to cross things off the checklist. And so when it comes to elder care, do not make the assumption that it's not, your policy today in the States will not be recognized here in Israel, because it really may be recognized. Aside from Bituach Leumi, there are two other forms of which to be able to receive long-term care in Israel. One is directly through the Kupat Cholim, and one is through a private insurance agent. That same agent that's going to provide you with house insurance or car insurance can also provide you with a long-term care plan. The plan through the Kupat Cholim is going to be exclusively a 5-year plan, and you will pay for it, and whether you use it or not. Well, if you don't use it, it just disappears. If you use it, you can only use it for 5 years of care, as opposed to Bituach Leumi, that if you are eligible, there's no expiration period of time on it. Also, when you have a long-term care policy with an insurance agent, also no expiration on the terms of care. Your needs will be assessed, they will be reassessed. And in spite of what your difficulty is, even if it's quite profound, that there is no question of what the need is, you will still be assessed, because this is a new country. The truth is that when you come to your family doctor, your new family doctor in Israel, and you say, these are my needs, he too is, or she too, will reassess those needs, because they want their own bar, they want their own point of reference, excuse me, that they can start from. We have retirement homes in Israel. We don't have retirement centers, let's say such as in Florida, but we do have plenty of assisted living situations, which have an independent living situation, which have also a nursing care, somebody who can't fend for themselves, they are dependent on another. We have nursing homes, and almost anything that you want, it can be found here in Israel. Nursing care, as opposed to elder care, is something that can be offered by the Kupat Cholim. What do I mean by nursing care? Now, God forbid, you've had a certain procedure and now you are bedridden, but you have follow-up, that you need a doctor's care or a physical therapist or an occupational therapist or a nurse to change a dressing. Once your family doctor writes a prescription for you to receive those things at home, you will receive those things at home through your healthcare fund. Excuse me. This is in spite of whatever level of healthcare you have. Now, we're going to move on a little bit, but I know that everybody wants to know how much healthcare costs in Israel. You're going to receive this information from my coworker, Josh, when it comes to the supplemental plans. I can tell you that the most expensive supplemental plan is in and around 200 shekel per month for an individual. You pay per individual in your home for children over the age of 18. The cost is based on a 10-year increment. So myself, at almost 60, with my healthcare fund, I actually pay less than 100 shekel for the first tier of supplemental care. I don't really have a need for the services in the second tier of care, because it's the first tier that really broadens exponentially all of the services, all of the medical services. The second tier takes it a little bit further, but also adds lifestyle. For example, I wear glasses, and if I had that second tier, I would have a 1,000 shekel leeway to buy new glasses. So if I bought glasses for 1,500 shekel, they would only cost me 500 shekel. I decided that that wasn't important to me, and I pay, like I said, less than 100 shekel per month for my supplemental insurance. In addition to whatever you pay for supplemental insurance is the fee from Bituach Leumi. Now, as new Olim, you will not have to pay into a healthcare contribution if you are over the age of 62 or over the age of 67 until you are here for a year, unless you are working in Israel. If you are working, then the Bituach Leumi contribution gets taken from your paycheck, not a small amount, but it gets taken from your paycheck. So if you are making Aliyah over this age of 62 and 67 and you're not working, you have a benefit of not having to pay a healthcare contribution until you reach your 13th month after your date of Aliyah. After that, each of you, if you are married, will be responsible for your own healthcare contribution of 104 shekel a month. If you are making Aliyah under that age, then you will pay two parts to a contribution. You will pay a national contribution, even if you're not working in your second year, and you will pay a healthcare contribution. Points to consider. I'll just add a little bit about costs. A standard medication, let's say a standard antibiotic, will cost you in and around 17 shekel. Again, you can do the exchange rate, but that's a standard rate. It's going to be the same cost whether I had Maccabi or Meuchered, Klalit, whatever kupa I have. Any medication that's going to be in the basket of medications from the state is going to be the same cost regardless of which kupat cholim I have. There's some really important points to consider. Most important is, of course, your research. How do you know which kupat cholim to join? How do you know you're going to find the doctor that you like? Let's say that you've always come to Israel every Sukkot. The Sukkot might be different because of Corona, but every holiday season you've been here and you stayed in Jerusalem. And if you didn't feel well, maybe you went to the medical center in the Wolfson Towers, a very popular medical center. But that is specific for tourism, for tourists. You would not be eligible to go there once you have made Aliyah. So now you have to go find a doctor within the stream, within the Kupat Cholim that you have chosen. No one's going to choose your doctor for you. You will choose your doctor. So now you research with your good friend who made Aliyah a year before you did, and she loves her doctor. But before choosing your Kupat Cholim based on her happiness with her doctor, you want to make sure that that doctor is still taking new patients. It's not a small thing to learn how to navigate a new healthcare system. As I said in the beginning, it'd be really hard for me to learn the American healthcare system again. And that is why we've had so many webinars on the healthcare system. That's why we have on our website some really good articles on navigating the healthcare system. If you're not sure even how to begin, write to me. My email was at the beginning. My email will be at the end, and I'm happy to get you started. Find out more about the resources you need. Somebody needs dialysis. God forbid somebody needs chemo. All preventative testing is covered by all Kupot Cholim, cancer preventative testing. And if you're coming with a history that you need, once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, imaging or whatever it is, that will be covered based on the need that you have. There's also some wonderful private and also public healthcare services, healthcare agencies. If you're looking for a private healthcare consultant, or the Shira Pransky Project is a resource that Josh will be sending, which is a wonderful resource that can go through explaining different parts of the healthcare system. What's the medication availability? I touched on it a little bit, and you want to make sure that your medication is going to be available. Do not make that assumption. And you'd be surprised, really, how small the medical world is. And so if you told your doctor that you're moving to Israel, hopefully within the next 2 years even, you'd be surprised he really may know somebody else within that field of specialty that you need to connect with, and then you can begin to take those steps to connect with that doctor even prior to arrival. Do come with a medical summary, not a Megillah, not a disc on key, a piece of paper, preferably a paragraph, more than one as necessary, from your family doctor and any specialist that you see, so that your new doctor and the new specialist can see where you've been, where you are, and where you're going, depending on your need. It's really important to feel secure, and it's hard to feel secure when you're making certain decisions from 6,000 miles away. Not only that, it's hard to feel secure before experiencing what you need to experience in order to learn. Right? Those of you from New York remember Sison's very well about being an educated consumer. And I really do believe in being an educated consumer. And in the 21st century, the information is truly at your fingertips to help you feel as secure as you can as you go ahead and continue to research more about the healthcare system in Israel. No questions have come my way from my coworker Josh Sussman, and I know that he's fielding certain questions, and so I'm going to continue. And again, any personal questions can always be sent my way to, as I said, to my email, which will be repeated again at the end of our presentation. So I hope that all of you are looking at these pictures and something is like fluttering in your heart to say, oh, Israel, because Israel really does have a place in everyone's heart. And for all of you today, because I didn't see anybody who's 25, myself included, there's the right time to make Aliyah. You may have said 40 years ago you were going to do it, and then, you know, somebody said, we want you to go to school. You just got married, you wanted to make some money. Life happens. Wherever you were in the past, this is where you are now. And it's so exciting to even consider that Aliyah, that Israel has its place waiting for you. It doesn't mean that making Aliyah is easy. It doesn't also mean that it's hard. It means that it has its challenges, which are really very surmountable. And that's one thing that Nefesh B'Nefesh really does pride itself on. It's upon your arrival, we have a whole department that is here to really just answer those questions. In fact, it's called NBN Answers. When you choose your community, choose that community based on your needs. You may have always come to Israel and visited Modi'in because that's where somebody lives who you're close with, but does it work for you? You might like the nightlife of Tel Aviv, but does it fill all of your needs? It really might. What about a small town? What about a yishuv? You're not looking for the big city. You'd like to live in a town that has 500 families, 1,000 families, 2,000 families, but not a huge city. What makes that community right for you? What are the criteria that you have? Could be weather, could be transportation, could be employment opportunity, could be closeness to family and friends, could be the opportunity of where you're going to turn to create community. And what I mean by creating community is really creating a whole network of support and friendships, because it's hard to say, hi, I'm me, I'm new, and you don't know how fantastic I am, but I am fantastic, and be my friend. And a person actually who's always been that way can do that. But for those of you who are maybe on the shyer side, maybe have lived in your community all of your life, born and bred, and now you are well into adulthood, haven't needed to go through that art of making new friends because it's just sort of come your way through how you evolve in your day, in your year, through work opportunities, through social opportunities. But where are those opportunities going to present themselves in the community of choice? That community from a physical perspective is really important. It is. And I encourage you to have a look at our community database to understand more about the community of choice, to reach out to one of the volunteers who are listed there to find out more. Excuse me. And I really do ask you to sort of look in the mirror and say, who am I? Who are we? Are we looking for the same thing? What are we looking for? Because we're moving to a place that we now have opportunity perhaps to choose something differently than what we've had until now. You're not necessarily moving to a community because you've always been there. You know, you're not moving a street over from this town that you've lived in for 30 years. You have real opportunity for a new adventure. And it's exciting. And just like, you know, for those of you who remember what AAA is, and there used to be a triptych, and they mapped it out for you. And if you just veered off course a little bit, yes, you were lost, but you were also going to create probably a memorable adventure. And that's what that, you know, that first year of Aliyah is all about. It's taking all the preparation you did, and now by experiencing it, making it real. And it's hard to consider the thought of creating community when you're so far away. But think about those things that are important to you. How are you going to spend your days? Are you going to be volunteering? Are you going to lectures, whether those are secular lectures or religious lectures, important to you? And is it important to you to do those things in English? It's hard to be a new Ola and jump what I call into the deep end, moving to downtown Bat Yam moving to downtown, any city that's really very Israeli versus a town that has an element of English speakers. It doesn't have to be American per se, it could be Australian, could be English, but having that social availability to you is important because it helps smooth over some of those first bumpy months as you begin to find your own feet and as you begin to find new friends. What does availability look like in that community for rental and affordability, not only for rental, but for purchase if you decide to purchase? Now, again, this isn't a housing seminar, but I would like to just talk about the fact that, you know, how mortgages are so different here. And so again, that assumption gets left out the door before you buy that Aliyah notebook. You want to buy a home? Speak to a lawyer to understand about your mortgage availability, a lawyer and a mortgage broker. Understand what benefits you have as new Olim. Understand what is important regarding credit rating, regarding how much you need to put down for that mortgage. And do you want to buy that home even before you make Aliyah? Yes, it's nice to be able to sort of walk in the door and say, wow, we're really home, we're not moving again. Or do you want to sort of live out what you have now prepared for and experience all of those decisions in more of a short-term decision of rental and then purchase or stay as a renter? You've owned a home perhaps for many years, and now you want somebody else to be responsible for different things. What is important to know is that whether you are buying or whether you are renting, there are certain costs involved that are not typical for someone coming from the US. For example, when you buy or rent a home, unless otherwise stated in your contract, it comes with nothing. It doesn't come with a fridge, and it doesn't come with a washer, and it doesn't come with those important appliances. And so this goes into your pre-Aliyah budget of understanding how you're going to furnish that apartment or that home. Understand about municipal tax, regardless if you're renting, regardless if you're purchasing, you will be responsible for what is called our nona, a municipal tax. Understand that you'll be responsible if you're living in an apartment building for maintenance. It's called vadbayit, for maintenance of the building through a cleaner and the gardener and things like that. And so if you're renting, what somebody told you was the fee for a monthly rental now has all of these extra costs. We have on our website a wonderful simulated budget that can help break down how much you can, you know, begin to think about in terms of your monthly budget. Your monthly budget is based on your Social Security. It's based on whatever it's based on. And always budget high, don't budget low, especially in those first years where you're experimenting, where you didn't know that perhaps food in the mini market at the corner was 3% more than the major supermarket at the other corner. It takes time to learn the ropes. And it takes time to learn the nuances of a community. And it takes time to learn that what you thought on the outside might not necessarily be on the inside. And that's called adventure. Adventure is all about learning and making mistakes, sort of, you know, I don't want to say falling down, but making mistakes and getting back up again and doing something different or finding out more information so those mistakes are not repeated. It takes time to create community. Again, I touched only a little bit about the physical community. Physical community, again, is of course very important. Some people want a place that's only flat. Some people want a place that they're going to find nightlife, you know, after 10 o'clock at night. They're not looking for a bedroom community. Everybody has their personal criteria, but when it comes to the creation of a network of your personal community, it's important to know that you're moving to a place where you're going to find like-minded people, where you're going to find people that share in your religious philosophies. I'm not going to touch on political philosophies, but those religious philosophies with perhaps age. I know that I actually enjoy having those friends who are 20 years younger than myself and 20 years older, but not everybody enjoys that. And that might also affect on where you decide to live and what you decide to live in. You might decide to live in some sort of residence that's specifically for the elderly. I don't want to say the elderly, because independent living is not for the elderly. And even, I know a lot of 90-year-olds, they're not elderly. They might be older chronologically, but they're not elderly. But there's lots of different residences, I'll say, that's specific for those who are 70 and above. There are people who are starting grassroots sort of programs to age in place together, people who are single who would like to share a house, people who are now reverting back to a roommate situation so that they're not alone. It's amazing, really, in 2020 and leading into 2021, the different types of scenarios that people are creating. It's not like they're doing something that's been done before, that they're creating so that they can make it work for them. Affordability is important. If you've heard me speak before, I always start, an area on budget by saying to be a millionaire in Israel, you have to start with 2 million. Israel is not an inexpensive place to live. Yes, you can find less expensive places to live, such as the periphery. You can live in the north, you can live in the south, and that's, by the way, something you have to consider. Are you so determined to live in Israel, or are you only determined to live in downtown Rehavia? And that's an important decision to make. I remember there was an Olet who wanted to make Aliyah, and he did not have a lot of money in terms of living in Israel. He didn't, but he decided that it was so important for him to live in Israel that he moved to Arad, and he's been there ever since. Arad is in the south, and he's so happy there. Coming home, there's nothing like coming home. Nothing in the world like it. I made Aliyah 24 years ago with my husband and 6 children who are now all married with their children. And I will share publicly, it wasn't easy. No, I had different challenges, kids and school and jobs, but it still wasn't easy to create what was important to me, to create on my day-to-day where I was going to make friends, where I was going to find the things that I needed, where I was going to find my rhythm. And then, I don't know, somehow it took time, took about a year or 2, but then it fell into place. And a lot of it depends on you. For those of you who will turn to Nefesh B'Nefesh for your questions, for your concerns, you'll have an easier time because you're going to circumvent those crises, because you're going to prevent pitfalls, because you already know that information. There are those of you who won't want to call because that's just the nature of people, that you'll want to figure it out on your own, and that's great. That's fine. There is nothing like that excitement of coming home to Israel. Spirit has those words, inspires and thought, and I hope what's brought you here today is that feeling of being inspired that, yeah, you know what? Israel can really work for me. I wasn't sure before, and yes, Corona happened, and yes, there's politics, and yes, the world's a little topsy-turvy right now, and perhaps that dream of Aliyah that started so many years ago, perhaps with a previous Aliyah experience, or perhaps with a recent experience pre-Corona, that you began to think, wow, you know what? I can do this. Israel's a very different place than it was when I made Aliyah 24 years ago. Whether it's the Kirkland products that I can buy in my supermarket, whether it's the accessibility of almost anything that I need, whether it's WhatsApping and with my mom that I can see her, she's in her kitchen, I'm in my kitchen. When I made Aliyah so many years ago, we actually wrote letters to each other because that's what there was. Right? Life has changed and Israel has changed. And I think it's time to make Israel home. And I hope that you'll turn to us to see how we can help you make that dream a reality for you. I thank you for joining me. And Judy, I want to thank you again for asking us to host. And please send your questions in. I'm happy to answer. And I wish you all a fantastic day.
Miriam, thank you so much. Miriam and Josh, you gave us a wonderful, wonderful presentation. And I think it was going to be very, very helpful to everyone. I just want to remind everyone that questions from the first program that we had was on August 11th, and all those materials are in our archives and you can access them right away. Later on today, hopefully today, you will be getting the materials from this program, including the recording and the slides and all the various links. So that should be hopefully either later today or early tomorrow morning. So you don't have to ask me, everybody will be getting that automatically. Okay, so moving ahead to some other announcements. On Thursday, Be'ezras Hashem, we have a very, very important program, which is a COVID medical update with Rabbi Dr. Aaron Glott, who is truly on the front lines of the pandemic. Many of you are on with the same way I am on Motzei Shabbos when he gives a general community update. This update will be specifically for our spirit demographic. And we do have the opportunity to ask questions of him. I put a form out and you received it in emails. That form will be active until literally 5 p.m. tonight. At that point, it will not be active. We will not be taking any more questions. So fill it out tonight by 5 p.m. tonight. Do not send us any private emails either before or after that time. We'll only take things with questions in the form. Beyond that, the questions that we'll be accepting are general questions. Please don't ask about your personal situation because that wouldn't be appropriate. And those should be asked, of course, of your personal family physician. We're making the questions general, so they apply to everyone. And we're asking for questions and not comments. So as I said, that's until 5 p.m. Also, keep in mind, the Zoom venue for this program was changed because of the very, very high capacity of attendance of the program. So if you registered before yesterday between, I think it was 3 and 4 p.m. and you were in our general Zoom, if you received the general Zoom registration link that you normally get, okay, we're changing that. You will be getting an email from us, not with this recording, it'll be a separate email that will give you the Zoom link for Thursday's program with a password or passcode, which you must use. So if you registered after 4 p.m., you would have done it through the OU and it should have been in your confirmation already. But we will be sending it out to everybody, so don't worry. But if you don't have a passcode, then you don't have the correct Zoom info and you, as I said, you will receive it. So just keep on the lookout for that. There'll be no questions asked on Thursday though, so don't be disappointed. There'll be no chat enabled. Anything has to be asked by 5 p.m. Finally, as we are in the month of Elul, we are asking that as you consider your tzedakah contributions at this time, that you think about giving to the OU Spirit Program. Your generosity enables the Orthodox Union to continue providing this quality program at such a difficult time for all of us. Emails that you'll be receiving for registrations and all will most likely all have a donate button on the bottom that is specific for the Spirit Program, so please consider it. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Miriam and Josh, for your wonderful presentation. Have a wonderful day. Be safe and healthy, and with God's help, we will see you on Thursday. Take care, everyone.